Are you overwhelmed with managing your computer network by yourself? Do you see cyber and privacy incidents in the news and worry that your computer system is at risk? Do you want to know more about protecting your computer network, your business, and your sensitive information? Then you are in the right place. Today on Practice Management Nuggets for Your Healthcare Practice, my guest expert is Jon Harmon with Trinus Technologies, and he's going to show us computer security tips to keep your practice safe. You are listening to Practice Management Nuggets podcasts, tips to help you start, grow, and improve your healthcare practice and your career. I help you manage the pink elephant in the room. Get the show notes from our website at practicemanagementnuggets.live. My name is Jean Eaton, your practice management mentor with Information Managers, and your host for this Practice Management Nuggets for Your Healthcare Practice episode. Today, my guest is Jon Harmon of Trinus Technologies. And Jon is going to share with us computer security tips to help keep your practice and your business safe. Jon, thank you for joining me today on Practice Management Nuggets.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Very excited.
Jon, you've got all sorts of great information about computer network and security systems, and I want to get right into that. But I want to introduce you and give you a good introduction here for our audience. Jon, you and I connected while we were working on a project for a shared client to help them to make sure that they've got the right computer security systems in place to protect their healthcare practice. And we've met a couple times since, and I've got to know a little bit more about you. I know that being a dad and a husband is really big in your world, and I learned that you're passionate about martial arts, and you're also an avid historian of all incarnations of punk rock, classic rock, and alternative rock. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is correct. That's what keeps me ticking outside of the IT world for sure.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about how you got into Trinus Technologies. You are a corporate account manager. What was your path to get there?
So I started at Trinus at the end of 2017. I came from a background of about 10 to 11 years of working in retail and fashion, actually. And through a couple different avenues here and there, I ended up working in IT, working over at Trinus. And it's been great. It's been a complete shift from my previous life, but that's been amazing because it's allowed me to not only be educated in a completely different field, but pass on valuable knowledge, education, and to other people and grow in new and exciting relationships. So I'm very, very privileged to be a part of Trinus.
Where does Trinus operate from?
So we're actually based out of Stony Plain in just outside of Edmonton there. We've been around for just over 21 years, based always in Stony Plain. We do have clients that are as far north as Rainbow Lake and as far south as Pitcher Creek, and we're all over the province working in medical, dental clinics, as well as municipalities, small, medium businesses, everything from a one-person shop to a 200-person municipality. So we're very vast and spread out, and so are our expertise, I would say, as well.
I'm anxious to get into your tips, but I want to ask you first. I talk about the pink elephant in the room, and it's that problem in your organization that just never quite gets fixed. You may have created workarounds or promised that you will get to it someday. Computer network security tends to be one of those things that we kind of worry that it's not as good as it should be. So it's definitely one of the pink elephants in our practices. Jon, I wanted to ask you, what is your number one tip that healthcare providers need to know about computer security and standards?
The number one thing, without a doubt, is having your systems and your hardware up to date. So that means not just, using a computer that you've had for 10 years that's out of warranty, that's using an old operating system. That is everything from having a new computer to having a proper antivirus, have the proper security mitigants in place at your clinic or your practice. Anything that needs to be continually updated and looked at should be updated and looked at. That's the easy answer I can get you. We go into many clinics that use outdated technology and outdated systems, and that's what 9 out of 10 times gets them into trouble.
Jon, so we're looking forward to hearing your tips about computer security. So take it away. Tell us what we need to know about managing computer security in our practices.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean. So the topic I always like to talk about to clinics and practices is avoiding breaches in your IT network. And from there, I get you to ask yourself 2 questions. How long can you afford to be down? And the other question is, what are you doing to mitigate that risk? So I'll give you a quick thing on Trinus. So Trinus, we like to set ourselves apart by 3 focused mindsets. So the first one is reliability, professionalism, and being client or customer focused. So what do we do? So at Trinus, we do cloud hosting. So this works especially well for dental, medical practice, and clinics because we cloud host strictly in Canada, actually strictly in Alberta as well. Focus on cybersecurity, fully managed IT, backup and disaster recovery, home and personal needs, and hardware of pretty much every shape and size that you might need. So the 3 quick points I'm going to talk about are wireless connections, your Wi-Fi, risk mitigation, managed IT, and then user education, which is always my favorite thing to talk about. So wireless connection. One way or another, everybody has heard of ransomware, malware. There's a million different versions of this, but essentially with ransomware is you get a screen that, you get a picture that pops up like this on your screen, and it won't let you access anything on your computer. And it'll say something like, you need to pay us money, or you have contracted ransomware, or something of that sort. So how do you get that? That's a lot of times when we get those phone calls, how did this happen? What happened? How did that start affecting my systems? Ask yourself a question. How many Wi-Fi connections do you have? So most of you should say that you have 2, a public and a private. So that's the first thing you think of. If you only have a public, that means you're allowing your Wi-Fi to be accessed by absolutely anybody. If you only have a private, that's probably the safest thing you can do. However, in this day and age, it's not realistic to have only a private. You need to also have a public. Second thing to ask yourself is, who knows the passwords to the private connections? A lot of times you can just go right behind the counter at a dental or medical practice, and you're going to see the password right on a sticky note on a Post-it for everybody to come and see. So how do you mitigate that? So I'll back up one quick second and I'll say a lot of times you get ransomware, you get some type of malware by it entering a connection onto your business network. So how does that happen? It's going to happen by a public device connecting to the private network. So if I use my phone and I access something illicit or illegal on my phone, and that it's connected to ransomware, and I go to the dental office, and while I'm waiting, I'm surfing on the internet, it's going to jump from my phone onto the private network if it's not protected. So how do you do that? You set up dual connections on business class wireless access points, so the public and private, as I said. This reduces the risk from the outside threats and the devices that are penetrating your network. And then we like to highlight this: do not allow any access to the private connection from outside devices. So a good way to think of that is if you have staff that want to watch Netflix or go on Facebook at their lunch hour, they need to bring their own devices and connect to the public network. So that private connection should only be accessed by devices owned and operated within your clinic, so the doctor's laptops, and they need to be connected to the private Wi-Fi. Keeping the devices with private or confidential information connected to a separate network is the main thing that mitigates the risk from an outside threat. That public connection that I talked about is what all guests and internal staff with BYOD, we call it bring your own device, connect to the public Wi-Fi. That way nothing confidential or pertinent is ever attached to that network, and therefore nothing can be breached. So the second point is the risk mitigation and managed IT. So what are you doing to ensure that none of these big risks or malware or anything, viruses hitting you? What are you doing to ensure that it's not happening? So in some circumstances, clinics are preferred targets because of the nature of the data or information you have. So for example, if you deal with someone who is a local personality or even a celebrity, because somebody has to deal with a celebrity or a personality and they have some type of medical condition, it's on your system or it can be accessed through Netcare, etc. So that could cause somebody to purposely penetrate your network. Clinics may be willing to pay a higher price to recover data from their network if it gets stolen. And most clinics have poor cybersecurity countermeasures. That's a very unfortunate fact. I would say 90% of the clinics that we visit do not have proper measures in place. There's almost always something that is outdated, has been Band-Aid fixed. So for example, using a free version of an antivirus rather than paying for a current managed antivirus. And then again, this is what happens. This is another example of ransomware. This is going to pop up and say that you didn't take care, you didn't do what needed to be done, and therefore you've been encrypted and you can't access anything. So how can I recover my files? You need to pay via Bitcoin. What's nice about this is that these very polite hackers give you a contact number if you need help wiring the money. One thing we're seeing a lot more in clinics is something called hijacking. So that's when hackers or cyber criminals, would be the more sophisticated way of saying it, will log into your network through a virtual private network. So if anybody's ever tried to watch American Netflix from their Canadian home, you've likely downloaded a free version of a virtual private network to change your computer's location. So they will do that same thing. They'll log into your network with a virtual private network, VPN, and they'll use your computer to do what they need to do. So where this started was cyber criminals wanting to use someone else's hardware to mine Bitcoin. So the footnotes on that would be, if I want to mine Bitcoin, which a couple of years ago everybody remembers was at its peak, I'm going to hack into your computer, Gene. I'm going to make it look like your computer is making the Bitcoin for me, and then I'm going to transfer it back to me. So your computer is going to get traced, mine will not. And then your computer becomes the home base to carry out all these activities, and no one's the wiser. So how can you be proactive on this? This comes back to managed IT, alerts and monitoring on all workstations, all servers, all networking equipment. We use something called an alert agent that we put on all these devices, and it allows us to monitor what goes in and out. Now, it's not us sitting there like Big Brother watching everything that is getting done, but if something is coming in that shouldn't be going in, we get an alert about it, and we can follow up with it almost instantly. Regular off-site backups. Earlier, you asked me what my number one tip would be. This would be my number two tip. Somehow have your important data and information backed up off-site extremely regularly, whether it's every second day, every day. Find a way to get this done. If you have a good internet connection, you can back it up to the Trinus data center. A lot of people already use different types of a cloud-based backup. And then a lot of other clinics just back it up to a physical external hard drive and take it off-site. The other tip is going to be regular updates to all network devices. Every time you see that Windows update pop up, update your computer. That means that they've done something to update the security in your system. So for example, Windows 7 just went end of life earlier this year. Actually, it was about a month and a half ago now. That means that there are no more updates for Windows 7. So if you have Windows 7 and there all of a sudden comes out a type of ransomware that's specific to Windows 7, you will get hit because you did not upgrade to Windows 10. Now the same thing goes if tomorrow a type of vulnerability comes out for Windows 10 and the next day there's a Windows 10 update. Update your computer so you don't get that latest malware or vulnerability. And then the bonus tip, back to my original point, is don't let hardware run past its recommended life cycle. If you are using a computer at your clinic that is more than 5 years old, you are at risk because the software is 99% outdated. The hardware is going to be outdated. There's going to have been new products since then. And every other component is going to be an old generation. So that is one of the biggest tips I can give anybody, is not to let it run past its life cycle. Then lastly, one thing I love is user education. Regularly update yourself and your staff. Provide policies, procedures on the bring your own devices, on outside devices, on acceptable use, and set up siloed permissions within your IT infrastructure. The easiest way of explaining this is not everybody needs to access the admin folder. So have permissions on that admin folder that only the doctors and the admin can access. Perhaps your secretary or somebody just running tests back and forth doesn't need to access that. So set up those permissions and have a record of who is allowed to do what. And that's just a cute little graphic on user education. And then one thing that Trinus does every week, or sometimes twice a week, is we send out newsletters to educate people. I would say at least 50% of the people on our newsletter list are not clients. They're people that just want information, and we're happy to give it to anybody that is hungry for it. So how does Trinus fit in? A few things I said at the very beginning. We provide all the necessary hardware, backup and disaster recovery plans. We also are doing something new called a risk assessment and vulnerability scanning. So if you want to know how likely you are to contract something, we have the tools to do that. User education, as I mentioned, cyber awareness training, and IMA compliance. We are at the point in our company that for medical and dental clinics, we will not work with a practice or a clinic unless they are fully IME compliant. And then my quote would be, the cost of doing business will always prevent you from the cost of never doing business again.
Jon, you packed a lot of information in there. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so your tips are spot on. Making sure that you've got up-to-date hardware and software, having a backup off-site, that's so critical. And the security risk assessment is a great way to be able to know that, how are you doing now and what is your gap to get to where you should be?
Exactly.
Okay. Jon, tell me a little bit more about signing up for the newsletter. If people want to get more information from Trinus and stay up to date, how would they do that?
They can email me directly at jharmon@trinustech.com. So my name, JHARMON @trinustech.com. And I can add them to the newsletter. I can send them updates. Happy to provide any other material or educational things that I have. We do have quite a bit. So there's never a shortage of educational material for sure.
Okay. If you've got a new practice that you wanted to get started with and you need a managed support vendor, how would somebody get started engaging Trinus to see if this is a good fit for them?
Great question. So the first thing we like to do with anybody is we do a little bit of, we always do a little meet and greet, and I try and get as much information as I can. But in order to really find out what you need and where there is a strength or opportunity, we like to do something called an IT evaluation. So basically, after I speak with a prospective client, or I visit them, a lot of times I do like to come out and visit them and have a face-to-face meeting. I usually send an IT technician, and they come out and they basically write you a report card. So they'll spend 2 or 3 hours going through your system and the practice itself to see what you have in and out of your network. And we do just a very low-level evaluation. I say low level, it's very general, it's very basic, but it's enough to find out about you. Sometimes if you have a very extremely difficult or sensitive network, we need to do something called a network evaluation, or a network assessment rather, and that gets very detailed, and that becomes a 40-page document. But the IT evaluation just lets us see where you're at, what we can do for you, where you're doing great, and that gives us a great place to start.
So for a new clinic getting started, you've got that onboarding system to help identify what their needs are and how you fit. What about a practice that's been doing it on their own for a while and are ready to say, I call in a friend. We need somebody to help us do the managed services. How does your onboarding process differ, or what can you offer that practice that is holding up their hands and said, I need help?
We would do likely the exact same thing. If you already have some things in place, a lot of times we'll transfer to us just because it's easier that way to deal with one vendor rather than 3 or 4. But it would likely be the same thing, no matter who you are and what you have. We want to come in and we want to do our own independent evaluation, and that way it's maybe a little less biased. One thing we find out, and this is any client in general, is that when you've been doing the same thing for a long time, you get caught in your ways. So as much as we would like to say, okay, we'll just take over from what you're doing, we still want to go in and freshen it up, because there's 99.9% of the time going to be something we're going to recommend you change anyways.
I don't speak fluent geek. I'm not a tech person, but I understand technology. And I find that one of the things that we tend to fall down on is, we're pretty good usually about accepting those Windows updates. But the place that people just don't know is doing those firmware updates on the Wi-Fi connections and on the routers and remote access. And that's beyond my technical scope, I'll absolutely admit. And it probably is beyond the technical scope of most of those people who are managing their own systems.
100%. And that kind of goes back to one of our original points is you need a team. You don't need one guy or one gal to do it for you. You need people with a vast novel of expertise and opinions that are working together for you, because a lot of time, like even myself, I'm very confident in revealing that, like, I'm not a technician myself, so there's things that I can't do. I cannot go in and build a server. I can tell you about the server, I can tell you what it does, what you need, what you don't need, but I can't go and build it for you or repair for you. And that's why you need a team of people that can do each of those little things to be able to swoop in and save the day.
I absolutely agree, John. And knowing that there is Trinus Technologies who is there to support you day in and day out, providing that managed services, is a great thing for a business owner to be able to outsource. We're always looking for more time, and being able to outsource to the right people at the right time for the right service is a smart business decision.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. John, you've given us lots of valuable information. You've given us some tips about making sure our computers and our software and security systems are up to date. And you've showed us the value of being able to keep up to date and avoid a lot of headaches. And you've also showed us ways that we can save time by partnering with a valued vendor like Trinus Technologies. Thank you for joining us today, John.
Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you for having me.
Did you hear something on today's podcast that you would like to go back and listen to again? Or maybe you heard something on one of our previous podcasts, but you don't remember which one, and you'd like to be able to find it quickly and easily. Well, that's easy to do now. If you heard something on this podcast that you want to revisit, go to practicemanagementnuggets.live/search. and enter the keyword in the magic box. You will be brought back to the podcast at the exact spot where we talked about it. This video keyword search tool uses the new Searchy app. If you would like to know more about this, visit informationmanagers.ca/likes-searchy. That's SEARCHIE. I'm excited about this new season, and I'd so appreciate your help to spread the word with your colleagues. First, make sure that you subscribe and add a review on whatever podcast platform that you use. Next, take a screenshot of this episode that you're listening to right now and share it on your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or your preferred social media channel. Remember to tag me and I will reshare your post. When you share the show, it makes it easier for people just like you and who like what you like to find the show. Until next time, this is Jean Eaton, your practice management mentor and your practical privacy coach.